let's talk about the Orange Bowl, Penn State and Notre Dame. What is your first blush thoughts on this one, Bruce Feldman?
First blush thoughts are coming off Notre Dame's win against Georgia, which was, I think, just a validating win for that program. It had been 3 decades since they'd won like a postseason game like that of substance. It was against Georgia. Not only that, I think what was really, an interesting subplot to this is Marcus Freeman gets this job after 1 year at Notre Dame. Young coach, charismatic. He's a good-looking guy who was really well respected in the industry. But now it's a big job. A lot of guys get their first head coaching job. It is not at Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
And so there were some good moments, some rocky moments. He starts out the first time he's a coach, head coach. They lose. They fall apart in the second half against Oklahoma State. Then there's the loss to Marshall and a loss to a bad Stanford team. And then this year, obviously, lose to Northern Illinois. In that game against Georgia, though, he out-coached Kirby Smart. He outfoxed him. I thought that was, I don't want to say a crowning moment because it's not the national title game, but that was, I think, a huge statement for you saw what they'd done. I think he's made some really smart hires. Al Golden on the defensive side to run the defense, getting Mike Denbrock back from LSU to run the offense. Put together a really good staff. They're really good on special teams. I think it's been very cool to see. You and I both grew up in the Northeast around the same time. There was a lot of people who either love Notre Dame or you hate them. I feel like there's a bunch of people who used to hate Notre Dame who are like, yeah, they're a tough team to hate now with Marcus Freeman there.
And I'm one of them, but I still find it deep in my soul enough to,
Come on, you can move on from that.
But they are an interesting team, and you want to talk about, because we just talked about Michigan using the transfer portal. I mean, Riley Leonard and Oben from Duke alone.
The kick returner who, people talk a lot about
Harrison
the middle
from
8.
Marshall.
Yeah, people talk about the middle 8. It was basically the middle 2. It was the minute before halftime and then the opening kickoff that changed the game. It changed the tenor of that game.
Yeah, Bo Collins, a transfer from Clemson, caught the touchdown pass after Oben caused the forced fumble, and Riley Leonard, his Duke teammate, finds the kid from Clemson, and then the Marshall transfer runs it back, and then the South Carolina transfer kicks field goals. I mean, but I mean, obviously they have a ton of, and it's not just any transfer. You got to get through the provost at Notre Dame. That's not an easy spot.
Good on Notre Dame. They supported their guy. I think there were some rocky moments. It's on a big stage, and I felt like, again, whether they can win this game, like I feel like Penn State is fairly similar to them. They're a good defensive team, really good running backs. I think they're healthier. We'll see how.
Is Abdul Carter going to play in this one?
I think he's questionable, and we'll see. Real game time decision. I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't play.
Wow. That would be something, man. I mean, he's so talented.
He is, but of the 2 star players who are, we expect Jeremiah Love to play. He's the most dynamic weapon Notre Dame has. I feel like Penn State could get around not having Abdul Carter better than Notre Dame could get around not having. And look, Notre Dame has lost like 5 starters on defense. Ben Morrison, best cornerback. Riley Mills, probably their most disruptive D lineman. They've lost some really good players and found a way to get through it. Penn State has a lot of, again, Abdul Carter would probably be a top 5 pick as an edge rusher, but Penn State has a lot of really athletic D linemen that they can go after you. And it's not like Notre Dame is going to throw the ball 50 times.
Mm-hmm.
Like Riley Leonard's not throwing deep downfield. It's not much of a downfield passing game. Not saying Abdul Carter, if he can't play, it won't matter. But it's different if you were playing Quinn Ewers. It's different if you were playing Ohio State. Notre Dame's game is really they want to run the football, and they're not going to throw it all over the yard.
Fair enough to say Penn State is the most talented kid on the field in Tyler Warren? I mean, is 44 of Penn State the most talented kid in the Orange Bowl? He's unbelievable. I will say that.
Yeah, I mean, he's a big tight end in kind of the Gronk mode. He's not quite as big as Gronk, but he is. They do a lot of really cool stuff with him. They don't have great outside receivers now. They do have 2 really good running backs. Katron Allen, I think people, were kind of wowed by Nick Singleton, who's more the size speed guy. And Katron Allen has gone off in the playoffs. Like, it's a really good 1-2 punch. And I think they do a lot of cool stuff with those 3 guys because they don't have like an elite outside receiver. The interesting subplot to this is, talking to some NFL draft people, The NFL, I think, is very intrigued by Penn State's quarterback. He's 6'5", he's 240. Drew Aller has a big arm. He's a decent athlete. He's a fast processor, which obviously people in the NFL are very intrigued by. If he plays really well, I know he said he's coming back.
Yeah.
But if it's word comes back to his camp saying, hey, you could be the first pick in the draft because people do not love this quarterback class, does that give him pause? Now, he's got to play well, this week against a good defense, but it's a big stage. Wouldn't shock me if there was push to get him.
So you're saying if let's just say he wins it all. Let's say Penn State
wins it all. Okay.
Yeah, and so he's got a ring, he's got a trophy.
Ohio kid could beat, well, we'll see if it's Ohio State or Texas, whoever.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, and NFL scouts are saying you could be first overall. Maybe he's changed his mind. I don't know.
If Penn State wins it all, then Drew Aller has definitely played well, extremely well over the last 2 weeks.
Bruce Feldman from Fox Sports and The Athletic here on the Rich Eisen Show. Let's move to the Cotton Bowl. And I guess the conversation is, how does Texas slow down Ohio State? Our colleague from Yahoo, and he comes on our program quite frequently, and he threw out an analogy that Ohio State is like Mike Tyson in his heyday, just coming out, and Dan Wetzel just absolutely saying that the Ohio State is just demolishing everybody.
In the last 2 weeks, it's been Mike Tyson.
Correct. That's what he says. This is what it looks like right now. So the question is, how does Texas slow them down? Do they have the ability to slow them down?
They have a good defense. I think it's an interesting situation here. Colin Simmons, they have some really good young players, especially Colin Simmons, Anthony Hill, a Thorpe winner at cornerback. They have good D linemen. They're really well coached with Pete Kwiatkowski. Statistically, they're an elite defense. I think they're very good. I push back on somebody, one of my coworkers who was like, it's a great defense. I was like, is it a great defense? Because the teams they played, it's hard to prove you're great when you see who they've played. They played Michigan. Michigan's not a good offense, especially at that point of the season, was terrible offensively. You go through the teams, they haven't really seen anything close, anything even remotely close to the talent that Ohio State has with two top-line running backs. The most talented player in all of college football is the receiver, J.J. Smith, that Ohio State has.
Number 4.
They have 3 other receivers who are really good. The quarterback's a running threat. They have a good scheme. This is a different kind of test. I mean, probably the 2 best offenses they've seen have been in the playoff. They played Clemson, who at the time didn't have healthy running backs, but Cade Klubnik played well, threw the ball on them, and then Arizona State had over 500 yards offense. It was very heavy Cam Scatteraboo. But again, they didn't have anything close to the receivers Texas is going to see. Now, can Texas's D-line and pressure get after Will Howard and be really disruptive? We saw that at times. They don't, Michigan, what Michigan did have is 3 elite college D linemen. You obviously have Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, and Josiah Stewart on the outside, really disruptive guys. You talk to people inside Ohio State's program, they were like, okay, in that game also, and I don't think this is an insignificant point, Will Howard was pretty banged up. I don't know how comfortable they were throwing him, with him throwing the football. I think you'll see Texas try to do some of the same things coverage-wise that Michigan did, but I don't know. I think right now they're just playing with a ton of confidence. They're cutting it loose.
I don't know if we could really use the Michigan game as a blueprint, period. End of story. And I'm not saying this this is not a troll. This is the real thing, is that every team that's left in the college football playoffs does not have, which Michigan has had over the last 3+ years, is the ability to get in Ohio State or Ryan Day's head. I mean, it's that simple. No one's getting in his head. What do you think? Is Penn State getting in his head? As a matter of fact, it's the other way around. I mean, Notre Dame and Ohio State, I understand that. I imagine if they play each other in the national championship game, Notre Dame would put an 11th man on defense. But that was a game that Ryan Day was. Like, the person who was in his head was Pat McAfee's Lou Holtz impersonator. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if anybody has the ability to get in Ryan Day or Ohio State's head from Texas or any of the other teams remaining. That's why I think the Michigan game, it was one of those days. Scrap it, and the way that they've been playing the last 2 weeks, that's kind of all that matters right now. And I'm genuinely concerned for Texas's ability to not fall down 14-0 like everybody else is doing right now.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I mean, again, this was a fairly one-dimensional Arizona State team that gave them a lot of problems over the course of the game. Now, Texas can cause them problems in other ways.
How so?
I mean, Texas has a really dynamic return game. Now, that we've seen some, Ohio State, when they played Oregon the first time, didn't do well in the special teams game. But Texas also has a kicker right now who you would worry about his confidence in clutch kicks after Bert Auburn missing in a couple of key kicks. But
how about this? If you want me to just jump in here, Quinn Ewers, his history with Ohio State, is there any there at this one?
I know it's like his old roommate was Jack Sawyer, and I think he has probably some affinity for a lot of those guys because a lot of those guys have been there for a long time.
Right, but he went to Texas because C.J. Stroud was there, right? And he knew he
went to Ohio State.
I mean, no, but what I'm saying is that he left Ohio State because he knew that there was no path for him.
At that point, it seemed like, and it's like 4 or 5 years ago.
Right.
He left South Lake Carroll a year early, because of the NIL situation to go get, by all accounts, around low 7 figures, because he could do that at Ohio State. I don't think realistically he ever had a chance to win that quarterback job. Was there for whatever it was, 4 months, transferred back to Texas, has had a really good career there. Mm-hmm. The thing I will say that if I was a Texas fan, I would kind of hang my hat on is Quinn Ewers has played in a lot of big games. And where he's been the underdog. They were the underdog, absolutely, when Alabama came in there. He played really well before he got hurt in that game, a quarter and a half in, but played very well. He's played well against, whether you're playing Alabama, especially when Nick Saban's there, was there, that was a powerhouse program you were going up against. You were punching up against them. This team, he has weapons. They have really good receivers. I think I feel like people downplay their running game a little bit because it's been inconsistent. But he made some really good decisions against Arizona State. I'm interested to see what Jim Knowles does with him, the defensive coordinator at Ohio State, because the first meeting against Oregon, they were on their heels, and Oregon kind of picked them apart. They only had 2 negative tackles in the backfield and no sacks. The other day in the Rose Bowl, 8 sacks, completely shut down the run game.
They killed it.
Yeah, and they have some interesting chess pieces. Cody Simon's playing at an All-American level in the middle of the defense at linebacker, and he's not Jeremiah Smith quite, but probably the next most talented guy is Caleb Downs, their safety, who was at Alabama last year. He's a brilliant player. He's all over the field. Yeah. If I was an Ohio State fan, I'd feel really confident right now.
In the few minutes I have left with you, Bruce Feldman, Fox Sports and The Athletic, I'd like to get your reaction to a tweet sent out by my colleague at NFL Network and the NFL Media Group, Tom Pelissero, if you wouldn't mind putting it up on the screen. Multiple NFL teams have inquired about whether legendary coach Bill Belichick would reconsider his move to college football, including the Raiders, whose new minority owner, Tom Brady, spoke recently with his old coach, per league sources. Your first blush reaction to that would be what?
Man, where was this 2 months ago for to set, Tom Brady was, and I'm not saying I like Tom and I think he does a really good job. I'm just, the first blush reaction to that is Tom Brady couldn't have talked to his old coach 2 months ago.
Well, he was still trying to get into ownership with the Raiders.
But just to say, hey, if it comes to fruition,
maybe
this could have been, because it wasn't all of a sudden, poof, Bill Belichick took the North Carolina job. There was a run up of about 10 days. The thing I would have thought would be more likely scenario was Tom Brady talks to his old buddy Mike Vrabel and go, hey, why don't you come to the Raiders? That, and again, I'm not saying that's definitely going to happen, but
Well, the other tweet that Tom sent out is it's a $10 million buyout before June 1, and everybody's trying to go through fine print to see if that even involves the NFL, and how $10 million is, technically, it's not car ashtray money, but it's still in the realm of, I can get Bill Belichick, I'm going to go get him. Do you think that let me ask it this way. Are there nervous people in Chapel Hill right now, do you think?
It's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. I really don't, because in one sense, if you're North Carolina and the people who really, push this through, and I'm just thinking, aloud, it was going from, hey, we're going to pay you $5 million, then all of a sudden they found $10 million a year. And the way this contract was set up, for a year from now, it was going to be $1 million buyout, which is not prohibitive at all.
Right.
And then, but you're sitting there going, okay, but if he waits another year, he's going to be 74 before the next NFL season. I mean, I'm on the record, and I feel like I said this to you, weeks ago, and I definitely wrote about this. I think Bill Belichick will have success in the ACC. I just think after, like I saw he's now on Twitter, and he's, I think after about a year of this or 2 years of this, he will be so disgusted by being what it takes to be a college football head coach that he'll be like, I don't need this.
That's your sixth sense. That's your gut.
Yeah.
On that
Now the
one?
question would be, would he be so disgusted after 2 weeks of being on Twitter and 2 weeks of trying to go into homes and recruiting and deal with this, where we go, yeah, I'll take the Raiders job and let's move to Vegas.
I asked Dion when he was on 3 weeks ago, I'm like, do you have any advice for Bill? As I know he's Bill Belichick, but you have more experience in the college game than Bill. He said, yeah, don't do home visits. That was his 2 cents.
Well, he's doing visits. I mean, he's got also what's different though is Dion had access to 2 difference makers right out of the gate.
Sure did.
His son, more than that, because the safety they had is a great college player. Dion coached him when he was in high school and then at Jackson State. So Dion had this pipeline into players where Bill Belichick, as the greatest football coach in the history of the NFL, he doesn't have that. He's going to have to, and I'm sure there's people who are listening, and I know high school coaches are going to be so enamored by it, and there'll certainly be players who are, but you still got to find those guys, and it's late in the process. Most of the top recruits in this class are already signed and they're probably enrolled. I mean, there's not a bunch of Bryce Underwoods, but there are guys who are already practicing with their teams and working out. Now all of a sudden you're getting whatever you're getting. And again, he's going into the ACC, not the SEC. Yeah, that's fascinating. Tom's tweet, Pelisaro's tweet about the Raiders, I don't know if it's Bill Belichick has enough money, he could probably buy himself out of that deal if he really wanted to get out of it, right? $10 million to him after all, he was making probably double that for I don't know how many years with the Patriots. I'm sure if he really wanted to make that happen, he could make it happen.
Which is why I was asking if there's nervous people in North Carolina that maybe he did do 2, 3, 4 weeks of just going around and seeing what it would take and how he might have to figuratively bend the knee for an 18-year-old kid.
I think they're only nervous that the basketball program is really struggling. They've been decent but not great in football forever. So,
I hear you. Hey, enjoy the bowl games, and we'll have you on next week in advance of the big one.
Looking forward to it.
You got it. That's Bruce Feldman of Fox Sports and The Athletic. Always fascinating talking with him. Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.